Hello, I'm Get the Cans, and it's a hot summer, very hot summer. Um, thing I would like to address is basically one thing that I notice is that there is a lowering number of protesters at each of the subsequent protests. Some people speculate that this has a direct relationship to the actual number of protesters, as well as the general interest of people protesting and criticizing the so-called Church of Scientology. This isn't necessarily a very accurate conclusion. It's the equivalent of assuming that just because a kid takes a sick day off of school that he's going to drop out of school. Very poor, very, very immature. To say that, it's also very immature at the moment to be creating any kind of statistic based off the fact that we've only been protesting, us critics and the anonymous group, I've only been protesting Scientology, officially, about 6 times. So it's still pretty hard to draw any kind of line based off that information, as limited as it is. One thing that I notice with the trend, although there may be less protesters, most certainly is more talk. When people talk about Scientology, it is common knowledge that even if people don't really know anything about Scientology, they now know of Scientology. I've only heard of maybe a couple people that I've talked to that never really knew anything about Scientology. It's because most recently, up until now, Scientology has been able to fly under the radar, exactly where they need to be, so that when they encounter somebody, they can basically knock everything out from underneath them and make them think that they need Scientology, slowly warping their mind over time and taking their money as well as their sanity, and then eventually their bodies as they are taken into the cult for free courses as employees, where they essentially make the cult money. Now, speaking of employees, one of the things that I've noticed within the organization is that the employees no longer answer questions. Apparently this is a trend that goes on at a lot of organizations in the so-called Church of Scientology. I'm not exactly sure why, but anytime someone asks any kind of question at all, they're simply directed to the book that they need to buy to find the answer, or a seminar where they can go and buy the book. It's kind of ridiculous that an organization treats people as though they are cash cows. Now, they've been doing this, obviously, for a very long time, but now it's very obvious to the public, and anyone who has any kind of innocent question to ask them, it now no longer asks them any questions at all. I don't know about you, but when I want to find out about a place, I don't fork over $40. If I can't find out something about it, I ask somebody, and if that person can't answer my question, I don't really care. I don't get involved until I find an answer. It's no use wasting any of your money unless you happen to be a rich idiot. A lot of them out there, but I don't see a whole lot of them within the organizations themselves, which happen to be pretty much deserted, which is why I find it absolutely ridiculous that the organizations would drive people out that by not answering their questions. I would figure they'd be pretty much almost begging them to buy the book to the point where they're on their knees and to get the money in there. I'm not exactly sure the financial state of the so-called Church of Scientology, but it can't be good, especially since a majority of the money that they take comes from customers that come in and buy their stuff, and people that pay for courses, and if people aren't going in there and buying anything, that they're probably not making a whole lot of money. Now, unfortunately, though they may not be making a lot of money, they don't necessarily, they're not going to go into the night quietly, most certainly. They're going to slave drive their employees like crazy to get out there and sell these products that they have in order to make their money back. I feel really sorry for the people that have signed up to be employees for the organization, because now they're probably in a serious crunch time where they need to basically sell more than what they sold each week, every week. Otherwise, they basically get punished in a variety of ways. It kind of feels sorry for them, but unfortunately it's just one of those things. They have the choice, although it may not be an easy one, and it most certainly, depending upon the grip that Scientology may have on them, a simple one or a painless one, but it may have the side effect of causing those people to simply leave an organization, basically having the organization lash out against their employees and causing their employees to leave, to leave Scientology and to do something else, because Scientology is not a nice entity, especially most recently with a lot of the different stuff that they're doing openly. In my previous video, I believe I talked about things where the Scientologists are not doing things openly, but I've done a little bit of research after getting a message of things happening, and lots of things are happening. A protester getting their foot... protester on an electric scooter named Stu Wyatt. Apparently, a Scientologist stepped underneath his electric scooter, got his foot ran over for the purposes of charging him with assault. The attempted fair gaming of a little girl, 6 years old, who went and tried to go into a store with her mother and to get a sandwich from the sandwich shop, and was blocked, and was basically told that she wasn't allowed in the store. No, she wasn't. She was blocked by a Scientologist who wouldn't allow anyone who was wearing a mask in the store at all, including the 6-year-old little girl who just wanted a little snack because she was very hungry. So I guess they wanted a fair game of 6-year-old girl. It's just stupid. And another one at one particular protest where apparently some Scientologists cut branches or something, and it almost hit one of the protesters below them. And I find that a little ridiculous as well, that these kind of assaults happened. Apparently no one was injured, so good on the anonymous members that were there. Just the kinds of things that are happening most recently. And it seems obvious that if you take all of that information, not necessarily each individual slice, but all the information that is currently available, notice that there's having an impact. So even though there may be a reduced number of protesters, it may not necessarily be because there's less interest or because we are going away. It might be because they're doing other things. Talking to people and talking to organizations and getting the message out there is probably one of the more important things to do. When you're protesting on the corner for 4 or 5 hours or whatever you protest, some people do it 24 hours, from what I understand. When people do things like that, you're basically spreading the information, and you don't necessarily have to do it in front of the organization. So it's rather inaccurate to say that numbers at protests, official protests, are any indication of the actual impact that Anonymous is having, or the interest in the group that is currently protesting the so-called Church of Scientology. So, anyways, the final words. Things are not necessarily as you see it. And, oh jeez. Well, basically, just because someone says something doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. There's a lot of facts and there's a lot of information out there, but unless you actually consider the facts of things that are happening outside of your scope, your view scope, but not necessarily outside of its context, within the conflict of the Scientology versus Anonymous, if you don't look outside those scope, you could possibly believe anything, which is part of the propaganda of the organization. If you do a lot of research, you may be able to find out more facts than you could before.